Hi, everybody. Welcome to Working Better Now. I'm Rob Levin, co-founder of Working Better Now, and I'm really so excited to be joined today by John Jantsch. John is a marketing consultant, speaker, best-selling author of Duct Tape Marketing, The Referral Engine, and so many more books. He's also the founder of Duct Tape Marketing Consulting Network, which trains and licenses independent consultants and agencies to use the duct tape methodology. His keynotes and training motivate and engage audiences around the world at industry and trade events. Personally, I just mentioned keynotes. John and I worked together on an event, I think back in 2007, 6 or 7, where that John keynoted, and I always looked at John with when after that first book came out, Duct Tape Marketing. John is sort of the one of the godfathers of small business marketing, if not the godfather. So, John, it's really a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, Rob.
Let's jump right in, John.
Sure.
One of the things, of course, I've been following you for forever, and one of the things I know you're talking a lot about today is strategy.
Yeah.
Why, and of course, your audience is the small business market. Why is strategy so important today for small businesses? And actually, before you go in, why don't we first define what you mean by strategy?
Well, so it's a real challenge, because if you go to Google and type in small business marketing strategy, and you'll get 15 different blog posts that are essentially a list of tactics. So people are very confused about what marketing strategy is. So rather than define it, I like to say, here's the problems it solves. I like to start there, because that's how you get people's attention. If you feel like your business is a commodity, that's a strategy problem. If you feel like you're constantly competing on price, that's usually a strategy problem. If you feel like you really can't attract the ideal customer, that the one that you're really going after, that's probably a strategy problem. If you feel like you are reacting to the idea of the week, the tactic, the new platform, of the week, that's likely a strategy problem. So you kind of get people's attention, with like, yeah, I want to solve those problems. Well, when you implement an effective strategy, which is essentially your intention for how you want to compete, your objectives for how you want to compete, what happens is that you start attracting, really that ideal profitable client. You can charge a premium for what it is that you do. You start getting more referrals and more repeat business, and you retain clients longer with an effective strategy. And probably most importantly, you work from a plan. You work from here's what we're going to do next. Here's what we're going to do after that. And you're not just reacting constantly to the idea of the week.
Right. And so, if you think about a typical small business, it starts out and it starts for any one of a number of reasons. And you get that initial business. When do you start to think about strategy? Do you start to think about it before you launch, or do you need some miles and some experience? And
yeah, well, I think you definitely should start. You should think about it before you start. But you also need to learn, on the job, right? I mean, so a lot of times people will say, well, I'm going to serve this niche or, this market. And so they go out there and say, that's my strategy. And then they get into it and they find, that market's not really so great. Or, I've actually got a couple clients in this segment and I really like working more with them. So it's constantly evolving, but you certainly should go out there with a bit of a plan that's something beyond, I'm an accountant, anybody who needs their taxes done, is my client.
Right. Which is a discussion I've had with my accountant. So, and John, why is this so important today? Or is it any more important today than, let's say, 5 or 10 years ago?
It's probably not any more important, but I think a lot of people have woken up to really the importance of it. And I hate to blame everything on the pandemic, but it's pretty easy. I think the pandemic really amplified a lot of gaps in people's strategic approach. Times were good and business was good, and didn't really matter if you had a strategy, I guess. And I think that when people had to really move quickly and adapt quickly and evolve to some extent, and frankly, the buyer, also became, I think, in a lot of ways more choosy as far as who they're going to do business with. Then all of a sudden, I think people really woke up and said, "Wow, why are these companies doing well and we're not?"
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think I always said that the pandemic just accelerated a lot of things that were already in
or
motion.
amplified a lot of things too. Yeah.
Yeah. So most of our audience, many of our clients, many members of our audience, they've been in business for a little while now.
Right.
And look, some of them probably have a strategy. I'm thinking off the top of my head of some of the people I know. Some of them definitely have a strategy. Some of them don't. Is this something that should be reviewed from time to time? Is there always an opportunity to take the strategy up a notch and then have more success?
Yeah, no question. And I mean, we work with people all the time that come to us and they say, "Oh, I have a strategy." And then when we really start to dig in a little bit, there are elements that are missing, because I think what a lot of people miss is that a strategy is not just a one-time thing, an event that you create. I mean, it evolves and you scale your business and your business changes and matures. And certainly any kind of strategy that you've been working from, can really benefit from evolving and maturing as well. But certainly, most small businesses, you read all these books that say 3-year, 5-year, 10-year plan. Most small businesses are almost 90 days to 90 days.
Right.
And so it's okay to have that kind of long-term vision, but we're revisiting things literally every 90 days intentionally, and certainly annually, to really kind of say, okay, what stage are we in now? Have we, moved forward? Are we ready now to start adding, some new things, or maybe going after a new market or new geography? I mean, those are certainly components of strategy.
Yeah, it certainly seems. I remember talking about this maybe when we first met, but back then I was saying that the pace of business keeps changing at increasing rates, and it just seems like
Sure.
it's been exponential since then. And everything's changing. The way people buy has changed. The way your employees want to be led has changed.
Of course.
For somebody who wants to get started, whether they have it in a new business or an existing business, what's the key? How do you get started?
Well, for existing businesses, one of the first things we really do is we try to identify, and it's an arbitrary number, but gosh darn, does it prove out to be right quite often. We try to identify their top 20% of their clientele, whether it's a product offering or it's a certain type of problem that they solve, or a certain industry segment or something. Because what we have found is that for most businesses, those top 20% are top 20% because they're profitable.
Right.
But there's also some sort of connection to your business. Those, believe it or not, that's usually where your referrals are coming from, is that group, because they're having a good experience. And the reason we start there is because what we've discovered is that if we can narrow their focus of a business, of their messaging, maybe even of their product offerings, to really focusing in on that top 20%, we will quite naturally start attracting more of that kind of client. But also what we've learned over the years is that group is the group that will spend 10 times more with you if you actually focused on what more you could do for them.
Right.
And so it's really the fastest way in a lot of ways to profitably scale a business. I mean, everybody knows that it's easier to sell something to somebody you've already earned their trust than it is to go out there and get a new customer from thin air. So quite often just turning our attention to that group in a more focused way could be a tremendous way to scale a business profitably.
Gotcha. And so that's the first step. What are some of the do's and don'ts when it comes to creating a successful strategy?
Well, for us, a big do is to map the entire customer journey. So often, people want to run an ad and sell something, and they want to go from that, "Oh, I just found out about you," to "Now I'm going to buy from you." And the real miss there is that there is an opportunity to build like and trust and even some sort of trial that is going to lead to charging, be allowing you to be able to charge a premium for those people. So instead of just, hey, here's our cheap price, you should buy from us today. We spend a lot of time mapping out this entire journey. We call it the marketing hourglass, that has 7 stages: know, like, trust, try, buy, repeat, and refer. And you might note that a couple of those stages come after somebody has become a customer. And that's really, another big, miss, I think, for a lot of organizations, is they don't spend enough time, first off, making that buying experience just as great as possible, but then really focusing on what more could we do for that, or how do we retain that customer for many, many years. And then lastly, a lot of businesses will tell you that they get a significant share of business by way of word of mouth or referrals, but they do absolutely nothing about it. And so, yeah, we really build this end-to-end customer journey as a significant part of strategy. How are we going to attract the right client? How are we going to charge, or be able to charge a premium to that client? But then how are we also going to retain them and do repeat business and actually turn them into raving fans? I mean, that's a big part of an overarching strategy, is to guide people through all of those stages and kind of plug the gaps that probably exist today.
And just for everybody, John mentioned, 7 parts, right? And most companies are not doing probably half, if not more of that. And like you said, a few of them are after, but it's really about just putting a little bit of time into thinking about those things, because I don't think any of them on their own are big lifts, right?
Right. Exactly. I mean, just the one that the one that I love is, if you dropped me into a company and said, what's the fastest thing you could do, to make this company more profitable, assuming they have a product that people want and they're able to sell it to folks, is, that experience when somebody becomes a new customer, the first 90 days, whatever it is, the onboarding, the transaction. I mean, having some really nice intentional touches at that stage can really make it. I mean, that's really where somebody decides if they're going to stay a customer, or if they're going to, tell their friends that you've, had a great experience. That's as you said, it's just one of those places where, we don't sit around, often enough and say, is this a good experience? Or like, how does this handoff go? I mean, and that's really, where you can, stand out from, any kind of competition in a lot of ways, because nobody's doing it.
Yeah. So, John, you mentioned charging a premium for your product or service. What's the key there? Is it a better product that's tailored for your target market, or is it your marketing messaging?
What's interesting is better product is kind of third. I mean, and unfortunately, that's where people focus. A message that your product solves a problem that I have, first off, as opposed to like, here's our cool thing. So message or package or whatever you want to call it is a huge part of it. But I'll ask you, Rob, have you ever paid more for a better experience?
All the time.
All the time.
And happy to do so.
And we all do, right?
Yeah.
And so when you get a reputation for a better experience, when a friend of yours says, Rob, you got to hire these people, we don't then immediately go and say, can I get a deal? Right? I mean, we go and expect to pay a premium, but we're willing to, because we trust now, by a variety of factors, that we are going to get the result that we're after, and it removes a lot of the risk. And that's really why I think I focus on this idea of charging a premium, because it's no fun to compete on price. I mean, there will always be somebody willing to go out of business faster than you, and so let that one sink in, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a lot more fun to create this experience that people are willing to come to you and say, look, I'm going to pay a premium. We can pay our people better. I mean, we can certainly have a much more profitable business, in the end, instead of just kind of trying to make ends meet. So it's a lot more fun.
It's just more fun. It's more fun when your clients are happy, when your employees are happy, and when there's some money left at the end of the day.
That's right.
Rather than chasing that last penny. Speaking of target market, Are you finding today that it's a matter of demographic, let's say in the B2B world, it's a matter of picking the right industries, or or is it maybe a matter of identifying certain behaviors or
Yeah.
traits
Yeah.
of customers and prospective customers?
Yeah, it is for me. I mean, the latter. The behaviors I think are, I want to work with businesses that I feel that we're aligned in values. That that they um, they value and respect what we do as delivering value. So it really gets down to a lot of those behaviors. Now, there certainly are plenty of people that would tell you, "Oh no, go pick a niche, and go hard into that." And there are some pros to that. I mean, there definitely are things that are very repeatable. If I'm working with plumbers all over the country, I can develop campaigns for them that certainly are not going to be that are going to be able to put it in other places, and I don't have to double up on the work. So there certainly are some advantages to that. Personally, for me, I would get really bored working with one industry. I love the variety of working with different industries, but I also love working with people that, for instance, if somebody works with us, they're going to go through strategy first. And one of the things we found is that people that value that are investors, they're investing in their business long term. They're typically very active in their communities. They're very active in their industries, and those behaviors generally lead to a much more satisfying engagement, all around.
Yeah, yeah. And what's the key then for a company that has identified several behaviors? You can come up with an example or
Sure.
two. How do you actually market to them? Because it's a lot easier to market based on demographic, right?
Yeah, it is. That's right. So what we found is that those behaviors typically show themselves in certain ways. So, as I started, I mean, I'll just use myself as an example. I mean, we love working with people that we call investors. They're not looking at everything that a business does as a cost necessarily. They're looking at it for long-term growth. And so then the key is, okay, if you've identified that, how do you see it? So one of the things that we've found is that investors typically serve on industry boards and or serve somehow in their industry group. They are very active their in their communities, be it nonprofit work or things of that nature. You can actually tell a lot about their employees, and how they treat their employees. I mean, and so those are all things that are not hidden, really. I mean, they're pretty visible, and those can be very good markers for identifying, then that behavior.
Yeah. So you mentioned one of the do's in terms of creating a strategy. What's an example of a don't, or what are the top few don'ts?
Well, this probably comes under the heading of you're not creating a strategy, but one of the top, don'ts in business, as far as I'm concerned, is don't try to be all things to all people. I always use this example. Poor guy. I hope he doesn't know I'm talking about him when he hears this. But is we had a company that was a basement waterproofing company, and they were great. They had a great reputation. You go to their website and they list 29 things they could do, because they had the equipment to do it. So why not, right?
Right.
And but 80% of their business came from this one service. And so, in addition to kind of narrowing their focus on the type of homeowners that they were trying to attract, we just got rid of all of the other ancillary services because they were just confusing the market as opposed to generating any business.
Yeah, great example. Okay, so you've created a strategy. Now, what are the keys in implementing a
Sure.
strategy?
The keys to implementing really are to stay focused, and the way we do that is, because again, a lot of times people will have us develop a strategy, and there's a lot that needs to be done, not a lot that needs to be fixed from the foundation, and so one of the keys. I mean, obviously, people hire us, and so there's there is work getting done in a measured amount, but one of the keys I think is to revisit just about quarterly and say, look, what are the top 2 or maybe 3 priorities for this quarter? Because the tendency to want to do it all kind of leads to overwhelm.
Yeah.
And then, when we're overwhelmed as business owners, usually nothing gets done. And so, if you stick to, here are the 2 or 3 things we said we're going to do, every tactic, like let's say you have a team of people, every project, every tactic should lead to, to somehow advancing those 2 or 3 priorities. If it doesn't, and a new opportunity presents itself, just put it in the parking lot and say, look, we're going to do that, next quarter. I think that's one of the real keys to implementation, is to realize, look, I'm going to be in this for a long time. Let's make steady progress as opposed to, trying to do everything and burn out.
Yeah, yeah. Which many entrepreneurs, of course, want to do everything, and then something new and shiny comes along. Yeah,
yeah. And they look back and they go, I thought we were going to do X, right?
right.
Because it takes discipline,
Yeah.
because AI is a great example, right? I mean, nice shiny object that people are kind of running around trying to figure out.
Gotcha. And speaking of AI, let's just jump into that for a second, because I'm sure you have a point of view on it. What is the opportunity that you see for small, mid-sized businesses with AI and what's come out this year with chat, et cetera?
Yeah. Well, I think the opportunity is immense. However, we've got to have the right point of view about it. I think a lot of people, and no fault of their own, I mean, it's being pitched to everybody as the panacea that, will do everything for you. And then there's the fear side of it. It's like going to make your job obsolete or entire industries obsolete. We're not there now. The thing that where we are, though, is it is such a tool to create efficiencies and to do more work faster, that if you're not employing it, you will get run over, by a competitor, that is employing it. And think of it, I like to tell people to think of it as a somewhat trained assistant that can bring you research, that can bring you ideas, that can really kind of suggest outlines of things. I mean, it is, the idea that it's going to write all your content, or it's going to, I saw somebody that an ad that came across my desk that was, write a book in 30 minutes with Chat GPT. It is not writing finished content. I mean, anybody who, is paying attention at all will look at your content. If you're using it, if you just cut and paste it, it's very sloppy. It will look very robotic in nature. But what it does is it gives you lots of ideas. I mean, one of the examples I like to use is, advertising headlines it's very hard to write an advertising headline and be sure that, yeah, that's going to be a winner. We always write 5 or 6 and we test them. And frequently we're surprised at which one works. Well, now you've got a tool that you can have write 200 for you, and 140 of them might be terrible, but you'll get your 10 that you can test instantly, and let the market tell you which one was the best one. So, that's an example of the efficiencies that can be created, using a tool like this. Another thing that you can do is if you write processes, we have an entire strategy first process, some of what we've been alluding to. We can write prompts around that will help somebody who maybe is less experienced be able to actually provide a lot of value if they follow the process. And so, those are examples, I think, of what we're going to see, at least in the near term, with AI. I kind of jokingly call it IA. It's really informed automation, is more so than artificial intelligence.
Right. Yeah. And I think what people have to remember when it comes to content, any type of messaging that they're doing, that it has to have that personal touch. It has to have that brand touch on it, right, which with the right prompts, you can kind of get closer to that, but it's certainly not a finished product. Not if you want it to be your voice. And if it's not your voice, it's probably not content that's going to help you at all.
That's right. And it really, it frees you up to actually be more creative. Because you're not having to think, okay, let me research the 20 threats, in this industry. I mean, you let Chat GPT do that, and then you use your brain to actually figure out, here are the 4 directions we ought to go with this, and here's how we apply it to our situation. But it's just giving you the research.
Yeah. So the strategy, getting into the implementation, somebody actually has to stop what they're doing, and think for a second, right? Which is a struggle for a lot of business owners, right? Because
You bet.
we're wearing many hats. There's always another opportunity or another crisis run, or coming through your desk or your van or wherever. What have you found works very well in terms of having the discipline to go through the strategic process?
Well, I think it's like almost anything in business. If you really want to do it, you've got to schedule it. It can't be just kind of like, yeah, we'll get to that last thing on Friday. So for us, and for me personally, even still today, it's having blocks of time that you commit to it without distraction, without, meetings, without just replying to email or having email. Obviously, the work that you all do with bringing executive assistants, get that stuff out, off of your plate, so that you can have the stretches of time that it generally takes most people. We've Let's say you've got an hour and a half, we spend 30 minutes getting yourself in the right mindset to do some work. Then you've got to have that little longer runway where you're not going to be bothered, or you're not going to be worrying about some other element. So, I always advise business owners to book it like an appointment. This Monday afternoons are, that's my strategy time for 90 minutes. And if I put it in a recurring calendar, nobody's going to schedule over it.
All right, book it and then keep it.
Well, yeah.
Don't squeeze something in over it, which I have a tendency to do. I will tell you, and one of the reasons I started Work Better Now with my partner is the brain power I was able to free up when I got all of these administrative things off my plate was literally life-changing.
Yeah.
And that's what we're hearing from our clients too. But I think you're right. It starts with blocking out the time. And for me, I try to do it with a pen and paper, without a device around. Because that's just a distraction.
Well, I was going to say the alerts or the temptation to just go check email or check Facebook or whatever. Yeah, that's absolutely right. There's a lot of authors that have there's software out there that turns all that stuff. You literally can't get on the internet once you hit your timer, and so all the distractions are taken away, and you've basically got a blank sheet of paper.
Yeah, and it's critical for owners to remember that this is their job. Yeah. Nobody else in the company is doing this.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, your employees, your family, your customers, are depending on you to go ahead and think about your strategy and how you're going to, essentially serve your audience and your market.
One of the things we hear from business owners all the time is that when they've finally started understanding working from a strategy and a marketing system, that all of a sudden they just had a huge amount of clarity, around who they are, the value they bring, who they're trying to attract. They finally have some control over their marketing, as opposed to just like, let's try this, let's try that. And that, that brings confidence, that they're making the right decisions when it comes to marketing. And, I think a lot of the stress in running a business is really those couple areas. I feel like my marketing's out of control. I don't know, how we're different. I don't have the confidence to know if I should do this tactic or that tactic because everybody's telling me one thing or another. And so it relieves a lot of the stress of running a business to feel like, okay, I have a plan now.
Yeah. As somebody, we're a client of Duct Tape, as somebody who's gone through the strategic process, I can 100% vouch for that.
Yes.
John, what have I forgot to ask you?
Well, I will tell you that we alluded to this idea of prompts and AI, and around marketing strategy. We actually have a freebie for you. It's got about 30 AI prompts, and it's not just a random list of stuff. It's attached to a process. So if you want to get a little bit of a sense of how we think about the strategic process, but then have this kind of supplemental prompts that can actually kind of guide you through a little bit of the results, or at least a start on the results, we're happy to give them away for free. And Rob, I think you'll have those, that URL will have teed up for you in the notes from the show.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll make sure to include that. And John, where else can people find more about Duct Tape and you?
Sure. pretty much what I've been doing for the last couple decades. You can find at ducttapemarketing.com, and that's DUCTTAPE marketing.com.
Fantastic. John, this has been a thrill. I really have been looking forward to this for a while. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes with the Work Better Now community.
My pleasure.